The intrigue going into the Canadian Stampede pay-per-view was a unique crowd reaction more than anything else, with the Hart Foundation being presented as babyfaces to the country after being the top heels on TV for months. The result more than matched expectations, as the main event saw one of the hottest crowds of all time that shook the building throughout the match for the Harts. Raw staying in Canada opened with Bret Hart coming out to another huge reaction, putting over the crowd in hyping the now set SummerSlam main event against Taker, with the stipulation that if he loses he never wrestles in the US again. Bret then introduced Owen and Bulldog before singing the Canadian anthem, ending up with Steve Austin coming out to attack them from behind, with Raw opening with its biggest audience in 5 months, starting with a 2.4 quarter. "6 days from Bash at the Beach, the company continued the build-up with a big hype job in advertising of the event, promoting the Hogan and Rodman vs. Luger and Giant main event with the expectation of drawing one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time, along with big mainstream media coverage for Rodman's in-ring debut. Curt Hennig came out for his first promo on Nitro, with Gene asking him about being Page's partner on Sunday against Hall and Savage, with Hennig not revealing it yet until Ric Flair came out to recruit Hennig to the Horseman. With Raw opening bigger than usual, WCW also saw an increase, opening with its highest first quarter rating since May, with the combined audience up overall. Two cruiserweight matches were going on at the same time on both shows, with the WWF trying to build up the light heavyweight division to go against WCW's worldwide cruiserweight matches. With Raw coming off a pay-per-view and perhaps trying to capitalize on potentially increased interest on the night in front of the hot crowd, the company put on a loaded card with almost every top name in high-profile matches, with Steve Austin vs. Triple H, Owen and Bulldog vs. The Nation in the tag tournament finals, and Bret Hart vs. Goldust in the main event, then Bret's first TV match in months. A week after Undertaker's secret reveal that saw the two segments with Taker and Paul Bearer drawing the two highest-rated segments of the night, Bearer continued the storyline, building anticipation for Kane's debut, talking about all the injuries he suffered in the fire and what he had to go through over the last 20 years. Undertaker was off the show after going over Vader last night to retain the title. The NWO music was heard for the first time on the night, over 30 minutes into the show, with Scott Hall and Randy Savage coming out to hype the Bash pay-per-view match, going over to the announcer's table with Hall taunting Larry throughout in what would be the start of their program over the next year. Hall called Page a mid-card jabroni before Savage said that he's gonna give Page a preview tonight by wrestling a match. WCW continued the usual viewership growth during the first hour, while Raw remained in the same starting range, jumping to a 3.4 rating for the quarter, which also included a Luger and Giant interview package hyping the Hogan-Rodman tag match. Raw climbed to a first-hour high 2.6 rating for the finals of the tag tournament, with Owen and Bulldog against Farouk and D'Lo going 7 minutes, with the Harts going over, advancing to face Austin and a partner of his choice next Monday in Austin's original partner hometown of San Antonio, with JR still talking about the possibility of Michaels working the match. Austin did an interview saying that he doesn't care who his partner or his opponents are, with his match coming up next. While the Monday Night Wars are still not competitive with WCW dominating for a full year now, another TV competition started to surface in the last few weeks as WCW's Nitro replay, which airs right after the live show ends, continued to break its all-time record, drawing a 2 and then a 2.1 rating over the last 2 weeks, almost equaling the live broadcast RAW rating. WCW jumped to a first-hour peak 3.7 rating for Bagwell and Norton against a Guerrero team going 8 minutes, along with a tease of an unknown limousine leaving the building, ending up with Eddie leaving Chavo alone in the match. The top of the hour saw high-profile matches on both channels, with Steve Austin coming out to open Raw's second hour to a mixed reaction from the Canadian crowd, with the interesting dynamic of the crowd seeing Austin being heavily booed last night in opposition to the Hard Foundation, with the announcers hyping up next week's expected completely different reaction with Raw coming from Texas. At the same time, WCW had Randy Savage coming out with Scott Hall for a match against La Parka. What looked to be a routine match with Savage dominating in the preview match to the pay-per-view, turned into one of the greatest swerves in show history as La Parka suddenly hit a cutter before taking off the mask to reveal himself as Page, to a huge reaction, surprising the crowd and everyone watching in a memorable angle that Page called one of the highlights of his career. Austin and Hunter went 9 minutes, with Austin going over with the stunner after Mankind came out. Austin then took the microphone saying that he doesn't like Mankind but will go to war with him, agreeing to team up with him in the tag titles match before turning on him with a stunner, saying that it will never happen, with Foley hyping up his response next week. The second half of the Austin-Hunter match along with the Austin-Mankind segment peaked the night for Raw with a 2.7 rating. One of the big talking points of the night, perhaps even more than anything happening on the shows, was a WWF commercial airing during Raw for a TV special set for next week called Summer Flashbacks, featuring the most memorable SummerSlam moments and matches. What created the buzz was the company promoting all the current WCW top stars on the commercial, while billing them as bigger stars than their current roster members, with the first names in the commercial being Hogan, Savage, Flair, and Warrior, along with Piper, Hall and Nash, with Bret Hart being the first current performer in the spot at fifth. Steve Austin was back out just before the main event for an interview with Vince in the ring, with Vince bringing out the finish of the main event last night, which saw Owen Hart pinning Austin to win the match, and Austin then leaving the ring in handcuffs after returning to attack the Hart family. Vince again brought up the crowd reaction, saying that Austin is likely to get a different reaction next week in his home state of Texas, with talks going all week on Shawn Michaels making his TV return on the same night. Austin hyped the tag titles match next week, saying that he will keep the belts by himself, before going into his match with Owen Hart at SummerSlam, telling McMahon to put an added stipulation in the match contract. Ric Flair came out again with the mannequin Piper, saying that he's carried more stiffs than there are apples in Washington and he's gonna do the same Sunday, continuing to go off on Piper without noticing him standing behind him, brawling to the ring before the Horseman came out to lay out Piper in the final angle to their pay-per-view match. Moments later, Raven was still sitting in the crowd without saying a word, as former ECW partner Stevie Richards made his WCW debut. With the ECW deal with the WWF falling apart due to backstage disagreements with Vince and Heyman over ECW main eventers doing jobs to Vince's mid-carders, leading to the cancellation of the planned SummerSlam match, Suddenly an ECW angle was going stronger on TNT with Raven and Richards. Bret Hart and Goldust won 10 minutes in Raw's main event in Bret's first TV match since April. The match saw almost half the roster out with the Hart Foundation, DOA, LOD, Shamrock and Austin all coming out to ringside, ending up with Bret going over to a big pop as the Harts stood tall in the ring, closing out 24 hours of one of the career highlights for the family in front of the hometown crowd, with Raw overall staying steady with a 2.5 rating. WCW's final quarter featured the Steiners against the Horseman going 9 minutes, with the cameras cutting backstage to see Savage searching for Page. The finish saw Jarrett and Sullivan going after the Horseman with the Steiners going over. Moments later, a few minutes from 11, Hogan and Bischoff came out for the pay-per-view go-home angle, with Hogan hyping up him and Rodman taking out Luger and Giant in 6 days, while the crowd was pelting the ring with garbage throughout the promo to major heat, ending up with Luger and Giant coming out to take out Bischoff and NWO members as Hogan escaped from the ring. The final quarter with the Steiners Horseman tag along with the Hogan promo gained over 600,000 viewers to peak the night with a 3.9 rating, with the company targeting Sunday to be a record pay-per-view with one of the most mainstream publicized matches since the previous Generation Boom period.